Hi, and welcome to Reddit Confessions. Today's story. It begins not with yelling, not with tears, but with something far colder. She said she had a date. But what I said back. That was the moment her world cracked open. She was folding laundry when she told me. Not even looking at me. One hand on a wrinkled t-shirt, the other scrolling through her phone. And then, like she was commenting on the weather, she said it. I'm going out with someone tomorrow. The words didn't slam down like thunder. They slipped under the door, quiet and venomous. I didn't answer right away. I just stared at the way she pinched the corners of the towel she was folding. That same towel I used last night. The one she walked past in the bathroom without a word. Did you hear me? She asked. I nodded. My throat was too tight for words. That was her style lately. Drop bombs, then move on like nothing happened. Pretend she wasn't rearranging the entire structure of our lives while still using the same laundry basket we'd had since our wedding registry. I sat down at the edge of the bed. Who is it? I asked. Not because I wanted to know, but because I couldn't help it. She laughed. Laughed. That's what you want to ask. Not why. Not how long. Just who. She chuckled like she was in control. Like this was her show and I was just a confused extra. I didn't respond. I was watching her, not her words, but her body language. The new perfume. The curled hair. The way she had painted her nails, the color she used to say was too loud for her. This wasn't spontaneous. This had been building. Planned. Rehearsed. I had no idea who she was anymore. She walked over to the mirror, inspecting herself like she wasn't talking to the man who'd held her through 3 job losses, a funeral, and that one awful Christmas when her mother told her she was a failure. Like I wasn't still here, somehow. But this time, I didn't beg. I didn't argue. I just stood up and said the one sentence I knew she wasn't prepared for. And when I said it, she stopped folding. She stopped smiling. She stopped everything. Because what I said didn't come from anger. It came from finality. And now, there's no going back. Her lips parted like she wanted to laugh again, but something about the way I stood there must have shifted the energy in the room. I wasn't yelling. I wasn't pleading. I wasn't throwing accusations. I was just done. That kind of silence isn't empty, it's loaded. And she felt it. For the first time in years, maybe, she really looked at me. Like she was realizing I wasn't the rug she'd been walking on. I wasn't the guy who'd always wait up with dinner and apologies. I was a man standing at the edge of something, and that something was not her. You don't even want to stop me, do you? She asked, her voice suddenly smaller. There it was, the crack. The place where guilt seeps in when confidence begins to rot. She was expecting a fight because that's all we become. Patterns. She pushes, I absorb. She strays, I justify. She insults, I blame myself. But that day was different. You've already left me, Ramona, I said quietly, the first time I'd said her name all week. This is just you finally telling me out loud. That stopped her. She turned, arms crossed, leaning against the dresser, as if bracing for something heavier than she expected. So what, you're fine with this? I'm not fine, I said. I've been not fine for a long time. You just didn't notice. Or maybe you did, and it didn't matter. She blinked. For a second, I thought she might cry. But no. She rolled her eyes and turned away, but not before I saw the way her hand clenched at her side. I didn't need tears. That tiny twitch told me everything. I had reached her. Not out of cruelty. Not with venom. But with a mirror. You want to know what I realized last night? I said, slowly. You stopped loving me way before I stopped recognizing myself. The room felt smaller suddenly, like the walls were leaning in. The silence that followed wasn't awkward, it was loud. I could hear her heartbeat in it. Mine too. I'd rehearsed those words all night, but now that they were out, I didn't feel relief. I felt emptier than ever. But not weak. Just, finished. Ramona turned around, arms still folded tightly. "You're being dramatic," she muttered. I almost laughed. Dramatic? I'd been swallowing my emotions for so long they probably had a name and a zip code by now. I'd shrunk myself to fit into a life that didn't have room for me anymore. And now that I finally said something, I was being dramatic. I didn't bother replying. Instead, I walked over to the drawer where she kept her jewelry and picked up the bracelet I gave her on our 5th anniversary, the one she used to wear every day, but hadn't touched in nearly a year. I held it out to her. "Take it," I said. "You're gonna want to look nice for your date, right?" She stared at the bracelet like it was burning her hand. Her expression shifted from smug to unsure. Then to something close to regret. I couldn't tell. But she didn't take it. She just stood there frozen, as if she finally realized this wasn't a game she could win. I set the bracelet down gently. "I won't stop you," I said, voice low, steady. "But I also won't be here waiting when you get back." Then I left the room. I didn't slam the door. I didn't pack a bag. I just walked out of the bedroom and into the living room, where everything still looked the same, but nothing felt the same anymore. I sat down on the couch, picked up the remote, and muted the TV without turning it on. A minute passed. Maybe 10. And then I heard her footsteps behind me. But she didn't speak. She didn't say anything. Because for once, she didn't know what to say. I didn't turn around when she stood behind me. I didn't ask her anything. I just sat there, shoulders heavy, eyes staring through the dark TV screen, watching my own ghost reflect back at me. For years, I'd waited on her, adjusted to her moods, tiptoed through our house like a guest afraid to overstay. But not tonight. Tonight, the silence was mine. And I let it spread. Finally, she spoke. Barely above a whisper. "You're really not going to ask who it is?" I wanted to laugh, not because it was funny, but because of how small that question was compared to the avalanche she dropped on me. Like, who was the wound, not the betrayal? I didn't answer right away. I let her stand in it. Let her fidget. Let her feel the weight of what she was asking. Then I said it without flinching, "No. I'm not interested in meeting the guy who thinks it's okay to go out with someone still living with her husband." I heard her shift, arms probably crossed again, jaw tight, the same defensive posture she took when she knew she was wrong but couldn't admit it. She hated discomfort. That's the thing with people like Ramona. They love the spark of rebellion but can't handle the burn that follows. They rewrite the rules when it suits them, then act shocked when someone refuses to keep playing. "I didn't plan for it to happen," she mumbled. I still hadn't turned around. She could have been lying. Or maybe she believed it, which was worse. I just connected with someone. It felt easy. Like how things used to be between us. That cut deeper than anything so far. She compared me, our marriage, to a casual connection with some stranger. A flirtation dressed up like fate. Like everything we built was just training wheels for her next vibe. I stood up. Not fast, not aggressive. Just enough to finally face her. Her eyes darted away the moment mine met hers. That was new. "Easy?" I asked quietly. "Of course it's easy. You don't know each other. He doesn't know about the time you went numb for 2 months after your dad died. He doesn't know about the way you hate Tuesdays for no reason or how you spiral when you feel ignored. He doesn't know the hours I spent holding you when you couldn't even say what was wrong. Of course it feels easy. That's not love, that's novelty. She opened her mouth but closed it again. Her fingers tightened around the hem of her sleeve like a kid caught stealing. I miss who I was, she said suddenly, voice cracking just a little. I stepped forward. Then you should have asked for help. Not a new man. Silence again. That suffocating, endless silence. Then, as if she thought she could reclaim power, she said the one thing that told me everything I needed to know. I'm still going tomorrow. My breath caught, but I didn't let it show. I nodded, once, and backed away. You'll find what you're looking for, I said softly. Just not here. And with that, I walked into the guest room, a place I hadn't slept in since my mom stayed over 2 summers ago. The sheets were still covered in faded flowers. I lay down fully clothed, arms crossed over my chest like I was bracing for impact. I didn't cry. Not yet. There was nothing left to spill. Just a slow, bitter ache that pressed deeper the longer I lay there. Behind the thin wall, I could hear her shuffling in our bedroom. I imagined her brushing her hair, moisturizing, doing all the tiny bedtime rituals she never skipped. But this time, she was doing them knowing tomorrow she'd be waking up to betray me with a smile. With intention. And the worst part? She thought I'd still be here when she got back. Morning came with that cold gray light that makes everything look like it's been drained of color. I didn't sleep, not really. My body rested, but my mind chewed through every version of the conversation we could have had. The versions where I screamed. The versions where I begged. The versions where I pretended I was okay just to keep the peace. But I didn't choose any of those. I chose silence. I chose clarity. And now she was getting ready to go on a date while still sharing a mortgage with the man she used to call her best friend. I heard her making coffee in the kitchen. She never made coffee first. That was always my thing, a quiet ritual that somehow made me feel useful. Like no matter how strained things were, at least I could warm her cup. I never told her, but I always made hers just slightly stronger, the way she liked. Today she made her own. Probably stronger. Probably in a new mug. I stayed in the guest room until she left for work. I waited until the door clicked shut, until the sound of her car engine faded, and then I got up. I didn't eat. I didn't shower. I just walked through the house, touching things like they belonged to a memory instead of me, the framed photos we stopped updating, the bookshelf she never used but swore she needed, the lamp she once said made our living room feel hopeful. I wanted to break it. I didn't. I'm not the smashing type. Instead, I opened my laptop and started typing. Not a goodbye note. Not a confession. A transfer request. I'd been working remotely for a company with offices in 3 states. There was an opening in Vermont. Cold, quiet, unfamiliar. It sounded perfect. I called my friend Warren, the one guy who'd stuck with me through college and had the unfortunate honor of watching me fall apart in real time over the last few months. He didn't even let me finish my sentence. I've got a room above the garage, he said. It's not pretty, but it locks. Come anytime. I said I'd let him know. But we both knew what that meant. The next hours passed like sludge. I checked the clock so many times it felt like time itself was mocking me. I couldn't stop imagining what she'd be wearing. If she'd change in the car. If she'd be nervous. Excited. Did she tell him she had a husband? Did she say we were separated? Did she even mention my name? I hated that I still cared. But I did. At 5:41 p.m. she came home. I wasn't expecting that. She walked in like nothing happened. Set her purse down. Took off her heels. Walked past the room I was in, didn't even look inside, and headed straight for the bedroom. She was humming. I thought the date was tonight. I was right. At 6:12 p.m. she stepped back out, completely transformed. New dress. Makeup flawless. Hair curled, styled in a way she hadn't bothered with in years. And perfume, strong enough to announce a reinvention. She stood in front of the hallway mirror, adjusting her earrings, pouting at her own reflection, like she was auditioning for a new life. She didn't know I was watching her from the doorway. Going somewhere? I asked, voice calm. She jumped. Turned around like a kid caught sneaking out. Her face, I'll never forget it. It flickered. A moment of guilt. Then defense. Then smugness. I told you. I have plans. You look good, I said, and I meant it. It's strange, though. You never put that much effort into our anniversaries. Her jaw tightened. This is different. It is, I said. You're getting dressed up to impress someone who's okay being the villain. She rolled her eyes and reached for her purse. Don't do this now, Neil. Don't make a scene. You said you wouldn't stop me. And I won't, I replied, stepping back. I'm not stopping you. I'm warning you. She froze mid-step. After tonight, I said, everything changes. When you come home, this house won't be the same. I won't be the same. And what you're chasing out there? I pointed vaguely toward the front door. It won't fill what you're running from. She looked at me then, really looked at me, and for a split second, her eyes glistened. But she blinked it away. I'm late, she said, brushing past me. And just like that, she was gone. I stood in the hallway, the scent of her perfume still thick in the air, and let the silence wrap around me like a second skin. This wasn't heartbreak. This was the slow, precise disassembly of a life. And it wasn't over yet. I didn't move after the door closed. I just stood there, listening to the quiet hum of the ceiling light and the soft creak of the floorboards settling beneath my feet. Everything in the house felt thinner somehow, like reality itself was starting to peel back. I walked over to the couch, sat down slowly, and stared at the wall across from me. There was nothing on it, no photo, no decoration, just a blank, white space I'd always meant to fill. That blank space somehow felt like the perfect metaphor for everything she and I had become. Time passed, but I couldn't tell how much. Could have been 20 minutes, could have been 2 hours. My phone lit up once on the coffee table, a notification from our shared calendar. Dinner with Nina. I stared at the name, wondering if that was who she was with. Nina. Or maybe that was just the placeholder she used. Maybe I'd never know. Eventually, I stood up and walked to the bedroom, our bedroom, and opened the closet. I didn't pack. Not yet. I just stood there, fingers trailing across hangers, across shirts I hadn't worn in months. Some still had the faint scent of her detergent. That stupid floral one I never liked but never complained about. I spotted the dark blue button-up she'd always said made me look presentable. She used to say it with a smile. Lately, she said it like she was doing charity work. I pulled it off the hanger and tossed it on the bed. Not to wear. Just to feel something. I sat beside it, rubbing my hand over the fabric, and for a second, I imagined I was still in a life that made sense. But then my eye caught something in the nightstand drawer. A card. One of those generic anniversary cards with glitter and hearts and meaningless words printed by a machine. I opened it. Inside was her handwriting, from 3 years ago. You'll never know how safe you make me feel. I closed it fast, like it had teeth. That version of her was dead. Or maybe she'd never really existed at all. I grabbed my laptop again. This time, I didn't just scroll job listings or browse apartments in the snow-covered corners of Vermont. I opened a blank document. I typed out a sentence I never thought I'd write. This is my formal notice, I will no longer be part of a marriage built on shadows. I stared at it. Read it again. Then hit print. That piece of paper came out of the printer like a verdict. I folded it slowly, slipped it into an envelope, and laid it on her side of the bed, right on the pillow, where she used to rest her head before turning away from me night after night. I didn't sign it with anger. I didn't write a bitter P.S. Just the truth. That's all I had left. Around midnight, the headlights hit the window. She was back. I didn't jump. I didn't scramble. I just sat in the kitchen, waiting. She walked through the door with a fake yawn, like she'd just been at a long movie. Her heels tapped softly across the floor. She didn't expect to see me sitting there in the dark with only the fridge light casting a glow. "Oh," she said, surprised. "Didn't think you'd still be up." I said nothing. She pulled off her earrings and tossed them into the little dish by the keys. Casual. Carefree. Like she hadn't just walked out of our life a few hours earlier. Like she hadn't willingly traded loyalty for some temporary thrill. "You don't want to know how it went?" she asked, half smiling, like this was a game. I looked at her, really looked. The mascara slightly smudged at the corner of her eye. Lipstick faded. Hair still curled, but her shoulders were tense now. The glow was gone. And for the first time in forever, I saw regret. Not enough to change anything. But enough to show that she'd felt the cost. "No," I finally said. "I don't care about how your night went. But I left something on the bed for you." Her eyes narrowed. "What is it?" "Just the truth," I said. "In writing." She tilted her head, confused. "What's that supposed to mean?" "You'll see." She stood there for a second, frozen in the threshold between two lives, the one she abandoned and the one she thought she wanted. Then she turned toward the bedroom. I stayed in the kitchen, staring at my coffee mug. It still had yesterday's ring at the bottom. I didn't clean it. I wasn't going to. 5 minutes passed. Maybe more. Then I heard her voice. Flat. Distant. "Neil." I didn't answer. Is this serious?" I stood, slowly, and walked to the doorway, stopping just outside the room. "I meant every word," I said. "You had your date. I hope it was worth what comes next." And then I turned away. Because for the first time in years, I didn't feel like a doormat. I felt like a man finally walking off a sinking ship, before it dragged me down with it. She didn't come out of the bedroom for a while. I stayed in the living room with the lights off, listening to the occasional creak of the floorboards as she paced. I could almost picture her, gripping that folded piece of paper, reading it 3 times, checking the signature at the bottom like she expected to find a joke or a condition. But there wasn't one. There was no dramatic monologue, no laundry list of her failures, no pleas for change. Just a clear, final decision, a quiet line drawn in permanent ink. At some point, she stopped moving. The silence that followed felt heavier than anything we'd ever yelled at each other. And that's saying something, because we've had our share of explosive arguments, over bills, her coldness, my so-called emotional neediness, which she often weaponized in the last year as if feeling anything was some shameful defect. But now, she had nothing to throw at me. I hadn't raised my voice. I hadn't even asked her not to go. I simply let her. And that, apparently, terrified her more than any fight ever had. When she finally emerged, I didn't look up. I heard her come in, the soft shuffle of her slippers against the hardwood, but I didn't give her the eye contact she was desperate for. I sat on the couch, laptop open, reading apartment listings in New Hampshire this time. I wasn't sure if I'd move there, but I liked the names of the towns. They sounded peaceful. Clean. Undamaged. She stood in front of me for almost a full minute before speaking. "You're overreacting." I let out the smallest, breathless laugh. It was dry and short, and it felt like it didn't even come from my throat, more like it escaped me without permission. I closed the laptop slowly and looked at her, and for the first time, I didn't feel hurt. I felt tired. Utterly exhausted. I'm not reacting at all, I said. That's what's eating you alive. She blinked like she didn't understand. But she did. I could see it in the way her chin dropped slightly. The way she folded her arms not to assert control, but to shield herself. Her voice trembled a little when she spoke again. So that's it? One night and you're done. No, Ramona, I said quietly. You were done. A long time ago. I was just the last one to notice. She sat down on the armchair across from me, tucking one leg beneath her like she used to when we'd curl up to watch movies. I almost flinched at the memory. She looked around the room like she hadn't seen it in years, like she was trying to remember what we were before she started checking out, piece by piece. It didn't mean anything, she said suddenly, a little too fast. The date. It was dinner. A few drinks. We just talked. That's worse, I replied without hesitation. You gave someone else the parts of you that used to belong to me. And you gave them willingly. Her lips tightened. She looked away. I didn't sleep with him. I almost thanked her for the clarification. But instead, I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees, locking eyes with her so she couldn't twist her way out of the moment. I don't care about the physical part, I said. That's not what broke us. What broke us was you deciding you needed someone else to feel alive again, and not even bothering to tell me. You wanted new eyes on you. Someone who didn't see the version of you with dark circles and cold shoulders and 3-day-old laundry. You wanted to feel new. I get it. But you didn't have the courage to leave before you went searching for that feeling. She shook her head, eyes filling, but no tears fell. I was lonely too, Neil. That hit harder than anything else. I know, I said. And instead of reaching for me, you reached for someone who doesn't even know your middle name. I stood, grabbing the laptop. You don't have to leave tonight. I'm not kicking you out. But I'll be gone in 2 days. I'll leave the keys on the counter. You can keep the house. Keep the cats. Keep the version of yourself you like better. Where are you going? I don't know yet. Somewhere cold. Somewhere honest. She looked up at me then, wide-eyed, desperate. You're really doing this? I nodded. You've already done it. I'm just catching up. And with that, I walked past her, down the hall, into the guest room again. I didn't shut the door. I left it open. Just enough for her to see that I wasn't hiding. I wasn't sulking. I was simply, done. That night, she didn't come to bed. I heard her in the living room, quiet, still. No TV. No calls. Just the sound of a woman who finally realized she wasn't the one in control anymore. Not because I yelled. Not because I punished her. But because I chose myself over the wreckage she left behind. She had her date. But my silence? My calm? That was the destruction she never saw coming. She barely slept that night. I could hear her walking through the house at random intervals, opening drawers, checking her phone, stopping in front of the fridge like she was searching for something to fill the ache. But the hunger she had wasn't physical. It was that desperate, sinking kind. The kind that starts when you realize the high you chased came at the price of everything that once gave you stability. I didn't move from the guest bed. I didn't text her. I didn't ask if she was okay. That part of me had gone quiet. Not because I wanted revenge. But because the part of me that used to care whether she was cold or warm, hungry or full, needed or avoided, it had finally gone numb. At sunrise, I heard the front door open. She left. No note. No explanation. She took her car keys and vanished. I didn't chase her. Instead, I made myself a cup of coffee and sat on the back porch with a blanket, watching the gray light stretch across the sky like a second chance. For a few moments, I imagined a life where I didn't meet her that first year of college. Where I didn't fall in love with the idea of fixing someone who never asked to be saved. I wondered who I might have become without her orbit pulling me off my own path. By noon, I had sent the final version of my relocation notice to my manager. I attached a photo of the Vermont opening and told them I was interested, not for a promotion, not for a title, just for the quiet. I packed 2 suitcases. Nothing sentimental. No framed photos, no anniversary letters. Just clothes, documents, and the one book she never touched, The Things We Leave Behind. I packed it out of irony. Or maybe I just needed something that proved I'd been thinking about walking away long before she pushed. She came back at 3:17 p.m. I know that because I watched the clock. I heard the door unlock slowly, not like someone coming home, but like someone returning to a crime scene. She stepped inside and froze when she saw my bags by the door. Her lips parted like she had something rehearsed, but I didn't give her the space to perform. "I'm leaving tomorrow," I said without standing up. "You don't have to say anything. You don't even have to understand." Her voice cracked on the first syllable. "I didn't go see him." I looked up. Her mascara was slightly smeared. Her eyes swollen. She hadn't cried in front of me in over a year, maybe longer. She always said tears were emotional manipulation. I used to believe her. Now I knew better. Tears meant nothing unless they followed accountability. I drove around, she continued. I sat in a parking lot for hours. I just kept thinking about who I was before I stopped trying. I didn't like her. But I don't like this version either. I didn't ask, I replied gently. Because it doesn't matter anymore. She stepped forward. I didn't kiss him. I didn't even call him. "Neil, I believe you," I cut in. "But I still can't stay." Her face collapsed a little. Like I'd given her the answer she didn't want but knew she deserved. And honestly, I think that broke her more than if I had screamed. Because screaming would have meant I was still fighting. This was acceptance. "I made a mistake," she whispered. "No," I said. "You made a decision." Repeatedly. "The mistake was thinking I'd always be here when you came back." She dropped into the chair across from me and buried her face in her hands. I didn't reach for her. I didn't offer comfort. It was one of the hardest things I've ever done, to watch someone I loved break and not rescue them. But it wasn't cruelty. It was survival. I had been rescuing her for over a decade. From her sadness, her boredom, her guilt, her silence. And somewhere in that process, I had drowned in my own absence. "I don't want to lose you," she said finally. "You already did," I replied. "The night you chose to treat me like a placeholder. When you said the words, 'I have a date,' and didn't even flinch." She shook her head, hair falling into her face. "I was stupid. You were selfish," I corrected. "And I let you be." She looked up, eyes red, nose running. The woman who once stood over me with pride now looked like she was dissolving right in front of me. I wanted so badly to rewind time. To fix it. To glue it back together with gentle words and soft hands. But I couldn't. Because now, every time she touched me, I'd wonder where her mind was. Every time she smiled, I'd wonder if it was for someone else. "I love you," she said quietly. And this time, I didn't believe it. Because if love was real, it would have spoken sooner. The morning I left, the house was quiet. No slammed doors. No shouting. No tears. Just stillness, the kind that settles after a long, heavy storm. I had packed my bags the night before, zipped them up, and left them by the door like punctuation marks to a story that had already ended. I didn't expect a goodbye from her. I didn't need one. But when I stepped into the hallway with my coat on and my car keys in hand, I found her already awake, sitting in the kitchen, barefoot, cradling a mug I didn't recognize. It wasn't one of ours. Maybe that was the point. She looked up at me like she wanted to speak, but nothing came out. I held her gaze for a long moment, just long enough to acknowledge everything we had been and everything we no longer were. Then I gave her the smallest nod, not of anger, not of resentment, but of release. I opened the front door. And then, just as I was about to leave, she whispered the last words I ever heard from her: "Thank you, for not hating me." I didn't stop walking. I didn't look back. But in my chest, something loosened. The drive to Vermont was long, but peaceful. I didn't listen to music. I didn't take calls. I just drove through towns with names I couldn't pronounce, past frozen lakes, quiet fields, and diners with signs missing letters. I arrived at a small rental cabin outside a town called Renbrook. It wasn't much, a single room, creaky floors, and a space heater that groaned like it hated being awake. But it was mine. The air felt clean. My thoughts felt lighter. And for the first time in years, I wasn't treading water in a sinking home. In the weeks that followed, I started writing again. Not for work, for me. Just little pages of thought, observations, and reflections. I walked every morning, just to hear my own footsteps. I cooked simple meals. I slept without dread. And slowly, the ache faded. I didn't replace her. I didn't look for someone else. I wasn't healed, but I was healing. And in that quiet space between what hurt and what comes next, I started to remember who I was before I bent myself to keep someone else from breaking. I don't know where she is now. Maybe she stayed in the house. Maybe she moved. Maybe she found what she thought she wanted. I don't hate her. I never did. But I finally understand that sometimes, the most loving thing you can do is walk away, not to punish, not to prove a point, but to protect the parts of yourself you spent too long giving away for free. If you're watching this and you've ever felt like a ghost in your own relationship, invisible, unimportant, constantly waiting to be chosen, I want you to know this: your silence does not mean you are weak. And your leaving doesn't make you cruel. It just means you finally heard your own voice again. Thanks for being here with me through this entire story. If something in it reminded you of your own life, maybe a moment, a decision, or a turning point, drop it in the comments. I'd love to hear how you found your strength, or how you're still searching for it. And if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe to Reddit Confessions, where real stories find real voices. Until next time, take care of yourself. You matter more than you think.